All right, you ready for this one, guys? In 2007, the body of a woman was discovered laying inside of a 4-foot by 4-foot cell. It was completely sealed up, and she was laying in a grave that she had dug for herself with her own bare hands. Right, so you know I always tell you a good story, and you always learn something if you watch my videos. So, stay with me. What monster could have done this? Why have I not heard about this in the papers, you might be asking? Well, let me fill you in with the details. All is not as it seems. It's still pretty grisly, mind you. So the woman in question was a lady called Isabel German, and we know this because records were kept about her and her life. She actually died in 1448, and her remains were actually found in a church in York. This is the actual skeleton of Isabel German, as it was found in All Saints Church in Fishergate in York. To give you a rough idea what the door to the cells looked like, they were completely walled in, save for a little hole. She was what was known as an anchoress. Anchor, as in the thing you throw off a boat, anchoress. And they were very pious women who chose, I say chose loosely, we don't know that for sure, to be walled up, sealed up in a very tiny cell with a tiny window or opening to allow food to be passed to them. And they would spend their days in pious contemplation, atoning for sins. It gets worse. So, we know from documents that she was in that cell for 28 years. 28 years digging her own grave with her bare hands. Okay, this caused her to have many problems. She had septic arthritis, which would probably have deformed her body in some way. I'll tell you what else she had towards the end of the video. You're not ready for that one. Now, the wrist bones of her hand had become so damaged and inflamed by the arthritis that they had fused together into one big grisly bone. And when she was found, she wasn't laying in the usual straight, laid out, prone position of somebody recently died and laid out. She was in the fetal position, which suggested that at some point whilst digging her grave over the 28 years, she got super tired, very ill, and lay down to sleep and simply passed away. Now, rich merchants of the day would donate hefty sums of money to the church in the hopes that the anchoress toiling away, digging her own grave, would aid their passage into heaven and save their souls. So she wasn't going to do anything with the money. She didn't need it. She was a hermit. So the church did very well out of it. That's why they encouraged anchoresses at the time. Now you might be asking, and here it comes, why would women become anchoresses in the first place? It's quite a brutal existence. Well, a lot of the time researchers have found that it's because they had huge amounts of guilt, and it was usually after they'd had consensual or non-consensual sex. Overwhelmed with guilt, they decided they had to atone for their sins and do something extremely pious, and obviously save their own souls and get into heaven. Now here's where I struggle a little bit with it. The lady in question, Isabel German, was in there for 28 years, okay? She was in no state to get up to any hanky-panky, plus the fact that she was completely sealed in this room. She could not get out, save for a tiny wee hole they used to feed her food through. When they examined her body in 2007, they found that she had advanced venereal syphilis. Okay, stay with me. Everything I've told you up to now is complete fact. Everything is recorded because, you know, when merchants donated money and blah, 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 the church had to keep records. So they know of this woman, what her name was, how long she was in there, and when she died. Everything is fact up to this point. Now, this is where I am starting to think for myself. So this is my ideas. This is not fact. But to me, it makes a lot of sense. Now, back in the day, or even now, we know, you know, some women don't have a lot of rights. They're made to feel very bad. Kind of, if you like, they are gaslit to believe that things are their fault. Now, what if she was a young, impressionable woman and somebody, you know, had their way with her, if you like, and she was made to feel terribly guilty that she was a sinner and somehow enticed this man to do this thing to her. And so she was told, this is the only way you can atone, and also keeps her out of the way a little bit for telling people what he might have done. And so she spends the next 28 years in there trying to make herself feel a little bit better about it, and hopefully God will forgive me, even though she's probably done nothing wrong. Or, and this is another theory, again, my theory, nobody else's, what if these rich merchants and people that came to gawp at her through the hole were allowed to pay for more? Now, that's just me saying that, you know, but back in the day, we were pretty barbaric, you know. We weren't the God-loving Christians we are today. Now, I'm willing to bet probably 90% of you have never heard of an anchoress before. If you have, jump in the comments and let me know. But I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say that you just learned about this. And hopefully, if I've taught you something interesting, you give that like button a little push and maybe give us a follow. Another picture of a complete cell attached to a church building in another part of the country, and you can just see just how small they actually were. And that was their whole living space for the rest of their lives.